not like faith. You're giving her power to dictate your ministry. Some men are not strong to handle that. This is a hard thing. Joshua 23, 11 through 13 is what we're going to read. Everybody there? Joshua 23, 11 through 13. Let's read it. Take good heed, therefore, unto yourselves, that ye love the Lord your God. 12. Else, if you do in any wise go back and cleave unto the remnant of those nations, even these that remain among you, and shall make marriages with them, and go in unto them, and they to you. 13. Know for a certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations from before you, but they shall be snares and traps unto you, and scourges in your sides, and thorns in your eyes, until ye perish from off the good land which the Lord your God hath given you. That was Joshua addressing the people after they had crossed over, after they went through all the wilderness coming out of Egypt and going through the Exodus. Moses had passed on, and Joshua took the reign, and this was him addressing the people before they scattered throughout the earth. Joshua, that's one thing he made clear. He says, know for a certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive out any of these nations before you, but they shall be snares and traps unto you. And up here at 12 it said, of these nations, even these that remain among you, and shall make marriages with them. You're not supposed to marry outside the belief. And that's what Ahab did. Ahab he's an Israelite. And he married a woman who wasn't an Israelite. And he enabled her. He gave her the power. Remember our definitions? He provided her with the means of opportunity. He provided her to make possible, to cause operate. And he provided her with the legal power to do what she did. And we're going to read about some of the things she did, because those will be my points. I'm going to point out everything that she was able to do because of Ahab. I'm going to point out everything that the Bible points out clearly that he gave Jezebel the power to do. And we do the same thing sometimes unknowingly. We know, but we don't know. Because the Bible says this, he that knoweth to do right and do it not, to him it is a sin. So you can't say, well, I don't know the Bible. Well, you know, if you take something that don't belong to you, it's wrong. So if you know it's wrong, that's a sin. And what does sin do? Sin separates us from God. The more sin we do, the further we get away from God. The more sin. So not going to church doesn't mean you're necessarily gonna go to hell. You need to fellowship. Don't get me wrong. You need to forsake not the assembly. You need to go to church. You need to get built up. This is a form of fellowship right here. But you need to talk to the saints and praise and worship and get. But he didn't know if to do right and do it not. To him it's a sin. You can't just sock somebody upside the head. So sometimes we enable people to do. I shouldn't have gave him that, or I shouldn't have did this, or you give people power to do things they wouldn't have been able to do if you wouldn't have done what you did. You know, I knew I smelled alcohol in his breath and I let him drive, and now he didn't kill somebody. Well, you gave him the power to do that. That's what this word enable is all about. We're moving into a time where you're going to have to be really responsible for your actions. Everybody want God to bless them. Everybody want God to heal them. Everybody want God to deliver them. What are you going to do with what God has given you? What are you doing with what God has given you? Who are you enabling to do anything? Okay, let me move on. The number one, we're going to start with the number one thing. This is on my list. You can have your own list. In 1 Kings 16:31, it said clearly that the first thing that Ahab empowered Jezebel to do, and the first thing he did was Baal worship. They immediately worshiped another god. Good Lord, that's commandment 101. Thou shalt serve no other gods. What are you doing, man? You Ahab, the king of Israel. And not only did you already sin against God by marrying somebody you wasn't supposed to marry, but here it is, you immediately go worship her God. So that was number one thing. Number two can be found in 1 Kings 16:32. 16:32 says, and he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. So not only did he marry Jezebel, who he wasn't supposed to marry, He enabled her by giving her power by marrying her, because you the king and you marry her, so she get a signet ring and everybody knows, oh, that's Jezebel the king, so we got to do whatever she say do, no matter if she wrong. The king married her, so she has the power of the throne and the crown. So off rip, he married Jezebel, then he worshiped her god, Baal, her god, and now in 32, this dude, and he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. He built the dude a house. He built their false god a house. So that's number two. He built this false deity, this fake god, from this wife he wasn't supposed. He enabled her, and you see he gonna start sliding. Now, like I said, he was from Israel. He was a believer. He was supposed to have been a believer of the faith. Now you see him starting to do things as non-becoming of a believer. Number three. Let's go to 1 Kings 18:4 for point number three. 1 Kings 18:4. For it was so, when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. So number three, what she did is she cut off the prophetic word. And anytime you're in any kind of battle, you have any kind of problems, or you're in a kind of battle, or you're in an intense situation, the worst thing can happen is for you to lose communication. That's almost war 101. When you're in war, if I could cut off the communications and they can't hear the orders from the general, and they can't connect with the east, the west, the north, and the south, I can cause confusion. And who is the author of confusion? The devil. The devil is the author of confusion. He loves confusion. If he can cause some confusion, you're not getting the orders you're supposed to get, and you're not getting the communication you're supposed to get, and so you're confused. Well, I thought I was supposed to be there at 3. No, man, it started at 1. That's confusion. So number 3, one thing she did was she cut off the prophetic word. She said, I got to get rid of these prophets. I got to get rid of these prophets, because all throughout Israel, whenever God speaks to his people, it was generally through a prophet. So I need to make sure that these Israelites cannot hear from their God. And the way I'm gonna make sure they can't hear from their God is I'm gonna take and it says right here, for it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord. She cut them off. Why would she cut off the prophets? Why didn't she mess with the bakers or the cooks or the janitors? Why didn't she mess with the people who wash the camels or the elephants? Because they're not the ones who God speaks through. He can speak through them, but I got to cut off the prophetic word. I don't want these people to be able to hear from their God, because they can hear from their God clearly. They'll get instructions and they'll overtake me. So number 3, she cut off the prophetic word in 1 Kings 18:4. Now go to 1 Kings 18:13 for point number 4. 1 Kings 18:13. This should be right there. You ready? Let's read it. Was it not told, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel slew the prophets of the Lord, how I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water? So right there in scripture, it lets us know the next thing she did was she murdered prophets. She didn't just cut them off. It's not good enough that I cut y'all off and try and deem y'all powerless, but I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to stop this word from coming through. I'm not going to let this word enable get through to you, so that way you can be empowered by it and have a better, more prosperous life. The spirit of Jezebel is a manipulating spirit, a controlling spirit. They want to dictate how everything goes so they can try to control their outcome. See, she wasn't from Israel. Being a believer and being adopted into the faith of Jesus Christ, we surrender and submit our life to God. We hear a word from God through whatever means he sends it through. We know it's God because we know our Father's voice, and we do what he tells us to do. And then we have a blessed life. Sometimes we don't necessarily understand what God is saying. But guess what? Obedience is better than your sacrifice to hearken than the fat of rams. It's more important for you to obey what God is saying and then hearken to listen to what God is saying. He needs you to listen. If you got kids or you're in some position of where you're in leadership, it's so important for people to obey and to listen. To obey and to listen. A perfect example I got for this real quick. What long time ago when I was teaching years ago at a church, and I made it very clear. If there's a little kid, it doesn't even have to be your little kid, and you're standing there on a busy street corner, and a little kid tried to jerk loose. And this little kid is so small, he can't see a bus coming. He's trying to jerk loose from his mom and he's close to the street. I don't even know these people. I say, hey man, you need to pull your kid back because he may jerk loose and fall on the street and get hit by the bus. But because they don't want to obey, and because she's not listening, the bus come, kid jerk loose, get hit by the bus, he's dead. Now she's crying, oh, my kid, my kid. Look, I tried to tell you, I'm tall enough to where I can see down the street, the bus was coming. And that's how the word is. God will give us a word that we need to obey and listen to so we don't be in danger. Jezebel murdered the prophets. That was point number 4. Point number 5 can be found in 1 Kings 19, 1 and 2. Turn over to 1 Kings 19, and we're going to read 1 and 2. I'm going to pick it up a little bit. I know you're getting something out of it because this ain't the way I even wrote it up. This is the way God is speaking it to you. 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 and 2. Point number 5. If you're taking points, I'm gonna go back over them before I end and let you know so you have all your points. You can always call in, I'll help you out. 1 Kings 19, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain the prophets with the sword. 2. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods, little g, do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. Basically, she just threatened the prophet of God. She's like, oh, I didn't get them all? I'm going to threaten this one. So my point number 5, is that by Ahab enabling Jezebel, he gave her to power to prophesy, not prophesy, but prophesy. She sat there and said, then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods, little g, do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. She just tried to prophesy his death. Pay attention, boy. We in 1 Kings. She just tried to prophesy his death, but it was a prophet lie because she ain't no prophet. She's a false prophet. She has no power, which we're going to see very shortly. Real quick reflection since we through 5. The first thing he did was Baal worship. He enabled her to enter in Baal worship. Number 2, built an altar and a house to Baal. Number 3, cut off the prophetic word. Number 4, murdered the prophets. Number 5, he gave her the power to prophesy. And we're at number 6, 1 Kings 21. We're going to read 21, 1 through 16. 1 Kings 21. Yeah, you should really keep up because we're all in Kings right now. 1 Kings, we're going to read 1 through 16. Let's read together. 1, 2, 3, read. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth of the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. 2. And Ahab spoke unto Naboth, saying, give me thy vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house, and I will give thee for a better vineyard than it. Or if it seems good to thee, I will give thee the worth of it in money. Number 3. And Naboth said to Ahab, the Lord forbid it me, that I should give my inheritance of my fathers unto thee. And Ahab came in his house heavy and displeased, because the word of the Lord, because the word which Naboth the Jezreelite has spoken to him. For he said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed and turned away his face, and he would eat no bread. Number 5, but Jezebel his wife came to him and said unto him, why is thy spirit so sad, that thou eatest no bread? 6, and he said unto her, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite, he said unto me, give thy vineyard for money, or else if it please thee, I will give thee another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give thee my vineyard. Number 7, and Jezebel his wife said unto him, dost thou now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise and eat bread. and let thy heart be merry. I will give thee the vineyard that Naboth the Jezreelite. Number 8, so she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal and sent the letters unto the elders and the nobles that were in the city dwelling at Naboth. Number 9, and she wrote in the letters saying, proclaim a fast and set Naboth on high among the people, and set 2 men's sons Belial before him to bear witness against him, saying, thou didst blaspheme God and the king, and then carry him out and stone him that he may die. Number 11, we're almost there. And the men of the city, even the elders and the nobles, who were the inhabitants of the city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them, as it was written in the letters which she sent unto them. Number 12, they proclaimed a fast and set Naboth on high among the people. 13, and there came in 2 men, children of Belial, and sat before him, and the men of Belial witnessed against him, even against Naboth in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth did blaspheme God, big G, and the king, little k, then carried him forth out of the city and stoned him with the stones that he died. 14, then they sent to Jezebel, saying,